Short version, I'm primarily on here asking for ways, tips, and experiences that people have had with being cheated on and handling it the right way. What were things that worked for you, and what did you do to get the thoughts out of your mind and not feel miserable from it, and not have you screwed up? Also, if you tried to get back together with the person that cheated on you or that you cheated on, how did it go? What did you do, and what would you do differently if you had another chance at it? What advice would you give to someone who was cheated on that still wants the relationship to work with the person? I understand that the context of being cheated on plays a big role in everything, so if you'd like to know where I come from on this specifically and some additional context, please read on. Longer version for context. I can't go over everything that happened in my situation, but I'll try to give you guys enough so you have a feel for it. I've been with my girlfriend for over a year now, and we both love each other a lot. She makes me happier than anyone else ever has, and I'm so happy to have her in my life. My girlfriend is someone who has a lot of health problems: depression, anxiety, PTSD, some physical health problems, and a few others I won't get into here. A lot of her PTSD is from very bad things that happened in her past relationships. I am there for her all the time. Whenever she needs me, I'm there for her. She has a lot of health problems, and if she needs me, no matter the time of day, I'm there for pretty much whatever it is. I've taken her to the hospital for various things dozens of times over the course of the past year, driven her to appointments and countless tests because of her anxiety. About 2 months ago or more, she wanted to delete herself because of a bunch of stressors in her life. This wasn't the first time that she was like this, as she's attempted to delete herself a few times in the past before I knew her. I was the only one she told and promised I would tell no one else. I tried to get her to get help, but she wouldn't do it because of unsuccessful attempts in the past. I took care of her for basically, and was her boyfriend, parent, chauffeur, therapist, and everything all in one. And when you have to wear that many hats, it's hard to be a boyfriend the same time. Even after this time period, she was still very close to me and would spend all day with me. But I had no space for myself and was emotionally drained from not only having to burden this by myself, but because I had no space for myself emotionally. 3 weeks straight, and she was beside my side the entire time. I do a lot for her, and she leans on me a lot for my emotional support. Through all of this, however, we have been able to make our relationship work, and I wouldn't have stayed with her through all of this and do all these things for her if she didn't make me happy and I didn't love her. We have amazing chemistry together and do a variety of things together that we enjoy: video games, board games, movies, hiking, nature, and a lot of the same values in life. At the end of this 3-week or so period, she said she felt like she was losing the spark we had in our relationship and that it was getting a bit stale. I told her we just had to have a bit of space from each other every now and then. So now that you have the backstory on her and our relationship, let's get into the crux of the issue. She has very few friends and is very lonely because of this. She feels like she doesn't have a friend group and has been wanting one for a while. She doesn't know how to go out and make friends, and every time I've tried to help her do so, she pulls back. She is also a very artistic person, and I am not so much, but I have a great appreciation for the arts and really like and support her work that she does. Before these major events happened, she did tell me that she felt like that she was missing that in our relationship. And I told her that you can't get everything out of a relationship, and sometimes you can get those things from friends. So, in walks an Instagram douche, who messages her through Instagram to ask her out. She declines, says she's in a happy relationship, and they don't talk until a week later, where he proposes they go out for a coffee as friends because they share similar interests and some art stuff. She says okay, asks if I'm okay with it first. I say yay, that's okay because you need more friends and I trust you deeply. So, they hang out and it went well. He said he wouldn't dare to try anything because he didn't want to ruin our relationship. They hang out a few more times, and then she calls me one night in tears saying that she needs to see me. Turns out he kissed her when they were hanging out one time, and she pulled away right after. She felt awful about it and felt so sorry. I told her that I forgave her because it's not like she had kissed him, and she pulled away. They hang out after that, but not nearly as much, and she was really appreciative that I was super cool about the entire thing. She then wanted to take a 1-week break where we didn't have any contact because she was unsure about our relationship, saying that she lacked the spark and that she wasn't sure if she wanted to do this anymore. I'm sure the two of them hang out a bit during this time period, but she said the only thing they did was kiss once, and that's it. And I guess I was okay with it because we weren't together. After about 4 days, she wanted to see me again because she wasn't feeling great anxiety-wise. I went over to comfort her. We had sex and then we decided to get back together. She was doing okay for a few days, and then she was really down again and was considering deleting herself again. I stayed over for a few nights in a row but told her that for my own health I couldn't always do it. Later that week, it was my sister's birthday. My girlfriend was messaging me later that evening if I could possibly come over because she wasn't feeling great again. I told her that I probably couldn't because I was spending time with my sis on her birthday. The next day she called me saying that I needed to come over and that she was almost in crisis. I went over and saw her on her bed, and she had harmed herself. I wanted to stabilize the situation, so I made sure she was okay, and then she told me that Instagram douche spent the night because she wasn't feeling well and that she was lonely and that they made out and did other things but didn't have sex. She said that she hasn't been herself for some time now and that she was sorry for everything she's put me through and that she hated herself for it, that she wasn't thinking clearly anymore and that there was clearly something wrong with her. I told her that she needed help and she agreed she would get it now. I told her that she needed to do things differently now to take care of her health, and then we decided to try and make our relationship work. The next morning, she changed her mind about us and said she hated herself for doing what she did to me and that she needed to learn to love herself again and that she couldn't do that with me being around because every time she saw me, she hated herself for what she did to me. So, we broke up for about 2 weeks or so. During this time period, she had some health complications and needed me to come over to help her out, so I did, because I still loved her and didn't want her to die. Soon after we got back together, although I'm pretty sure she did some stuff with that guy when we weren't together, although she tells me she didn't have sex with him ever. Right now, we are back together trying to make this work and working on our issues together. There are some things she needs to work on to get healthy, but there are also things I need to work on for myself as well. Mainly getting my confidence back, my trust in others, getting over and dealing with this experience in my life, and trying to better myself so I can be the best version of myself that I can be. I'm having a difficult time with all this, which is why I turned here for some advice. The questions I asked above is what I am looking for, and I hope everyone's advice and experience can help me in some way. Thanks. Update. 6 years later, my girlfriend and I started dating 7 years ago and was very clear early on that she was dealing with health issues, both mentally and physically. I never had an issue with it, and was always super supportive of her and came to help her out whenever she needed. We don't live together, so sometimes these issues with her would arise very late at night, early morning, and I would go over to help. Sometimes it meant taking her to the and spending the day in the hospital with her. Over time we worked on a few things that could help her health-wise, but nothing quite seemed like a long-term solution. She lives at home, as do I, and have both been saving up to buy our own place to live together. Because of her health issues, she's always been very dependent on her mom, but since I started dating her, she's become a lot better with that. As our relationship grew, I spent a lot of time at her place and essentially lived there, and her parents were more than happy to have me. I would still bounce back and forth between our houses, but I would say a solid 70% of my days were spent at her place. A few years ago, she told me that she felt like she was starting to become super dependent on me, and she was scared. So, we tried to do our best to make sure I wasn't around her practically every day. She didn't have a solid friend group, which unfortunately made this part a little harder, as she had a very difficult time being by herself to do a lot of the mental issues she faced. This situation became even more difficult once her grandmother started getting sick and her mom had to stay there for at least half the month at a time. This meant that for the past year and a half or so that I was at her place for the majority of the time. What made this situation even more complicated is that she has a compromised immune system, so if anyone from my family had any COVID symptoms and I had gone back home, then we wouldn't be able to see each other for a couple of days to stay safe. During the past 6 months, she got a new job, got a promotion, and made a new friend group from work. They recently started hanging out a few months ago, and she was happy to have finally found a group of friends who were so accepting of her, and I was happy for her as well. At the same time, I was getting burnt out from work and was doing my own small business on the side. I had also lost my closest friends 2 years ago, as well as our family dog, who was like family to me, so it hasn't been an easy past couple of years. So about 2.5 months ago, she had a severe mental health scare, and I had to take her to the and spend the day there. To keep a long story short, she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and prescribed new meds to take, as well as regular therapy appointments with a new therapist. Within about 10 days, she barely ate anything and seemed a little off. She's usually a very animated person, and she wasn't quite reaching those highs anymore. She wasn't quite reaching the lows either, and a lot of her anxiety attacks had gone away. She started becoming more frustrated with me, saying that I wasn't doing a good enough job at taking care of myself. After a lengthy discussion, I outlined ways in which I would take better care of myself and do these things she was asking of me. From this point on, I did everything I could with my limited time and even scaled back on work as well as my small business. I was doing all the regular things I would do as well as new small things, and she would often thank me for this and let me know that she noticed. She was always super appreciative for the things that I did for her. About a week after that, she said that she wanted to talk and that she wanted to spend some time apart because she felt like she was far too dependent on me. She said she wanted to use this time for the both of us to work on ourselves and resolve any previously unresolved issues. I told her that I didn't like the sound of taking time away from each other, and that after being together for 7 years and going through so much that it felt like she was jeopardizing our relationship. That any time I've heard someone say we need some time apart, it never ended well for me. She reassured me this wasn't the case or intention, and that she would never do anything to throw away our relationship. That in fact, this was a good thing we both needed to do to make our relationship stronger moving forward. She told me we could still go on small dates occasionally, and I said I liked that part, so we decided to go forward with it even though I was really scared about this whole thing. I wanted to give her space, so I waited about 10 days until I asked her if she wanted to go on a date with me. And she said that not only that she wasn't available, but that this wasn't a good time for her with where she was at mentally. She told me that she was still good to have a conversation with my parents over issues that were bothering her. So, although I was upset about the date, I was hoping that it was trending in the right direction with the convo with my fam. The convo with my fam happened and it went really well. I was elated and it went even better than I could have hoped for. Right after that was done, she wanted to talk to me in private, and that's when she broke up with me. She said that she needed to work on her mental health as well as her attachment issues to me, and the only way for her to do was to not be in a relationship with me. I told her there is a middle ground here where we could just see each other once or twice a week, maintain contact, and set better boundaries and support systems for her, using her friends and family more in a time of crisis rather than just always relying on me. This was something we had spoken about earlier as well. She said it wasn't just that. There are small things over the years that have made her build up a resentment towards me. That even though issues we have solved and dealt with, she still holds a grudge against me for them. I told her how much I had been working on all of this stuff and showed her the progress I made even with the taxes. Any issues she was previously bothered by I was working on, already fixed. I had even been going for therapy, and she was happy to see that, but I got a sense from her that it was too late. She said she has a hard time getting over any wrongdoings anyone does to her, even after a resolution has been found. That in combination to her attachment to me was leading to her newfound frustrations with me. She urged me to move on with my life without her. After I told her the only one I've ever wanted was her, she said that if it happened that we both wanted to talk one day and see if it could work, then maybe that could happen, if we both wanted it. But it wasn't possible to give a time frame on it. I'm feeling so lost right now. We've been through so much together and had built up such a solid relationship where we were open with our feelings, conflict resolution, morals, and interests. We both got along with each other better than anyone else we've met in our life, and I just feel terrible. I feel blindsided by this because any issues we've had, we've been able to figure out solutions together, and this just feels like she's making a choice for the both of us. I'm happy that she's finally getting the help that she needs, but hate that the only way she feels like she can do that is without me completely in her life. As an animal lover, I also miss the dogs so much, especially after losing our family dog not too long ago. I'm working on myself now more than ever, but I'm honestly feeling so depressed. We had plans to buy a house, live with our 2 dogs, and get married. Now that's all down the drain, and I feel like my future is lost without her. How do you view this situation, and what can I even do? I want to respect her decision, but at the same time I feel like if I do nothing, I'll lose her forever. I want to make this work, but I feel like if I push too hard that'll only set back whatever little chance left we have together. TLDR, my girlfriend of 7 years who we were planning a life together broke up with me after a new mental health diagnosis and starting a new mediation. She's developed attachment issues to me and hasn't seemed entirely herself since starting new meds and recently gained a new group of friends. I want to make things work with her, but I also want to respect her decision if there's any chance we could be together again. What should I do? How am I supposed to handle everything I planned for in my future being taken away? I'm working on myself, but every day I'm without her feels like nothing but pain. Update. So long story short, my girlfriend ended our 6-year relationship as she had developed attachment issues to me that was affecting our relationship. She had other stuff that she wanted me to work on, like spending more time on myself so I could better take care of myself. So much of my time the past 6 years has been spent helping her in any way I could, as she has some mental and physical conditions that make her life difficult. We've been separated for about 2 months now with pretty much no contact. I still love her more than anything, and I don't know if that will ever change. We were so involved in each other's lives, and we are planning a future together. If you'd like a more in-depth version, you can read a previous post of mine here, https://red.it/xis5cc. Always, I've been seeing a therapist to work on myself, but a big issue I'm having has been feeling so down about not being with her. We left the possibility open that we could reconnect down the road but never really put a timeline on it. We half mentioned late fall, early winter, but again no definitive timeline, and at one point before that came up, she mentioned maybe I should try and just move on and not wait for her because she doesn't know how long she'll need to work on herself. My therapist is suggesting asking her to go for a friendly walk or go grab coffee together and just treat it as a chat like friends. She said that no matter how it turns out, I'll have my answer for how she feels, and I can move forward with my life at that point. I just don't know if that is the best move and have given her the appropriate amount of time. I'm worried she'll think it's not enough time and think that I'm pressuring her into something she's not quite ready for yet. She might see it as me not respecting her decision, and I don't want that. My original plan was to give her a birthday gift that I had already purchased a while back. She loves plants and video games, so I got her this handmade pot from a game she loves and have been taking care of a plant she loves inside of it. I think she'd really like the gift and maybe see it as starting anew with her. I figured I would write a nice handwritten message in a card, as she also loves those. The issue my therapist had with this is that her B-Day is at the end of November, and they think that's far too long to wait for this, and then I'm left here in this middle area of not knowing whether to move on with my life or not. Does anyone else have any advice on a similar situation that they've had like this before? Dunno if I should go with my therapist idea or with mine on this one. The past couple of months I've been working on myself a lot, getting therapy and overall, just spending more time on me. It's not an easy process, and I'll admit at times I've looked at her social media to see if there's any indication that she's doing okay. Okay, so here's my big fear right now. I think she may have been cheating on me before she ended things off with me, and she might not have been entirely truthful for why she ended things. I saw that there was this new guy that started following her on social media about 2 months ago, and she's following him back. While we were in a relationship, I wasn't someone to ever keep track of this stuff, but when we broke up, I would check every now and then. This guy had started liking her posts about a month before we broke up. I noticed this a few weeks ago, but didn't try to read into it too much. Recently, I saw that a friend of hers also started following this guy, and then her uncle and her cousin. The second part of this is that the day she broke up with me, she told me she recently got an IUD. This was something we had both discussed for some time, but she never decided to go with because she didn't want any side effects. When I asked her why she recently got it, she said because she felt like it was the right time, as her work insurance was now covering it, and that she spoke to other women, and they said it would help with her period. All of that is perfectly fair, but I'm just surprised that she had never mentioned it to me beforehand, as we were very open with each other about these things. Another important factor is that we hadn't had sex since last year, and it was something she said she wasn't sure if she was interested in anymore, and she believed she was asexual. Even though this was a little difficult for me at first, since prior to this, the first couple of years in our relationship, it was happening frequently, and as time went on it became much more sporadic and infrequent. I wanted to support her, as with everything, so we made it work, and I never tried to pressure her into anything she didn't want to do. When we did have sex, we always used a condom, and even though she really wanted to have sex without one, she would always get super scared and anxious if we ever tried without it, as she wasn't able to take birth control due to her health complications. Which is why this IUD is very interesting timing. The last thing that is factoring into this is that I found out that she recently got COVID. During the entire pandemic, she's been the most careful person I've ever seen, which made sense because she has an autoimmune disorder, and her grandmother, who she sometimes helps, is very old. She recently told me she got it as I was planning to pick some stuff up from her place. When I asked where she got it, she had mentioned work as a possibility, but said she really wasn't sure. As safe as she's been all pandemic, the month before our breakup she had started hanging out with her friends indoors, and she's eating with them, meaning taking off her mask, which up until that point she always had on whenever leaving the house. When I called her out on this, she said she was just trying to prioritize her mental health, but in the past she had been so angry at people for saying that exact thing when not taking every precaution for COVID. I feel like I keep trying to tell myself that I'm probably reading into all of this too much and that I don't know what's going on in her life, so I shouldn't assume. But on the other hand, I feel like this is slowly starting to add up now, as the breakup never fully made 100% sense to me. And the whole thing with her family following this guy recently just seems too obvious now. I feel like they may have already met him at Thanksgiving recently because they live nowhere near him, so how would they know him? But maybe they do know him from something and it's just one big coincidence. He recently posted a photo where he visited the city where her grandmother lives, so maybe they had Thanksgiving there. I dunno. I feel like it's not healthy for me to keep digging into stuff like this, but it's been difficult to stop. I don't feel like I had enough closure with our breakup in the first place, so I'm second-guessing everything now. I guess I just don't know how to stop. Before this started happening this week, my therapist told me I should reach out to her to see if she wanted to go for a walk with no pressure. I told my therapist I wanted to get back together with her, as when we broke up, we left that possibility open to seeing where we are both at some time in the fall or winter. But recently seeing this stuff happen and then her relatively cold responses to me through text about the COVID stuff has me thinking twice about that. She's unfollowed me on all social media a couple weeks after our breakup, but very recently viewed one of my IG stories, so I dunno whether to be encouraged by that part or not. She doesn't like any of this guy's posts, but he's like all of hers since a month before the breakup. I'm thinking of still reaching out to her to go for that walk idea, but I don't know. Part of me feels like flat out asking her about this guy, but I feel like I'll come crossed as this unhinged stalker, which would obviously do more harm than good. I still love her so much. We've been through so much together and have so many great memories. We even were considering marriage at one point. I don't really know what the right move would be here. Update. A few months into our relationship, I was the person she leaned on the most in life when things were going bad. And I didn't have any issue with that because I always thought that's what you should do when you love someone. It felt like the right thing to do no matter how much this person needed me to be there for them. I've always handled crisis situations well and have been really understanding of anyone with what they're dealing with. She lived with her parents as she wasn't quite ready to move out yet due to all of her health complications, which never bothered me at all since I also still lived with my family because I financially wasn't able to move out yet. It was not always easy not living together, but we always found ways to make it work. As for her parents, her dad tried to be supportive in his own way as he'd buy her groceries, and if she was in need of going to the every once in a while, he would take her or take care of the dogs for us. But other than that, he wasn't really there for her than anything much more than financial support. Her mom is one of the kindest and most resilient people I know and was there for her a lot, especially in times where I couldn't be. This became much less of the case when their grandmother started getting sick, and at this point is very likely in the last year of her life. The past 2 years, the mom has had to split time between being at home and going 4 hours plus away to take care of the grandmother, where she was spending several weeks of the month helping her. Whenever she was gone, my girlfriend needed me to spend the majority of my time at their place. I didn't mind in the beginning, when I was in between contracts, but it quickly became very difficult to do when I got a job in the city that required me to commute 1 hour and 30 minutes one way every day. And with my girlfriend, I was essentially doing the job of 2.5 people, which had taken a toll on me and over the course of the past half a year as it had been so much more intense. I had also started doing video content creation when I was between contracts last year, which was something she was supportive on and I quickly became successful with. I put a lot of effort into it in the beginning, as it took time to produce, but I tried to keep up with it as much as I could once I got my job in the city. I pushed myself because of our goal to get a house together one day and get married. I knew that with our salaries combined it would take us a really long time if ever to get there. So, when this side business started picking up, I saw that as an opportunity to get us there faster. But things at work soon became very stressful, with people leaving at my job and me having to do the work of several people on top of the exhausting commute. For months it was chaos, and I even started looking for better opportunities that might have been closer to home but couldn't find anything. It was hard to get everything done in the day: work, commuting to and from, prepping meals, working out, making videos, and at the end of it all going to her place to help her with anything she needed. Many times, it was just listening to her vent about her day or just hanging out, but I knew that I wasn't quite getting enough time for myself, and she knew it as well and felt guilty for it. We had many conversations about me needing that time for myself and her trying to spend more time on her own, and it got a little better this year. But as her mom kept spending more of her time away, I just kept getting more and more stressed with everything, including my work. My girlfriend was so great, supporting me and listening when I needed it, and often helped me with things in my side business. We had great communication and we always felt like we could talk to each other about anything. It was around this time where my girlfriend started making new friends from work, and I was happy for her. She's always struggled to maintain friendships, but these friends seemed great for her, and it was slowly allowing me to spend a bit more time for myself. She even got a promotion at work, which was great because she always struggled to stay in a job for very long. We loved her grandmother, but we both knew that realistically, the situation with her grandmother wouldn't last forever. I guess with things slightly getting better, I knew there was an end in sight to a lot of this stress. I also want to note that everyone in her life really liked me. Her family took me in as one of their own. Both her parents constantly praised me for how great I was to her. Her friends adored me constantly. Even her sisters, who she didn't always get along with, wanted me to be a part of things with them because they saw how great we all got along and how much better she was doing with me. Then in June I got sick with some stomach bug. My girlfriend was really afraid to get COVID, as not only was she immunocompromised but so was her mom and her grandmother. We wouldn't go out to eat, see movies, vacation, see friends, and we took every single precaution possible to avoid COVID, so me getting sick meant that we had to spend at least a week or two apart. This was difficult for her, and she felt so bad for me and kept telling me how much she loved me and even came to deliver food for me at the front door one time. It was then in early July that she had an episode where she said she didn't feel like she had control of her own body. I canceled my plans and spent the day with her, and she seemed okay by the end of the night. By 4 a.m. the next morning she needed to go to the and she felt so guilty for asking me to go because she knew I'd need to take time off of work. Long story short, they got her to see a new psychiatrist and diagnosed her with BPD. After a very long day, we came home, and she told me she felt bad for putting me through this all of the time. She would often have a sense of guilt with this stuff and felt like I was going to leave her, even though I never said or gave indication I would. I'd always reassure her that I love her, and I was here for her, and I wasn't going anywhere. And then that day I kissed her for the first time in a little while. That turned out to be our last kiss. It seemed like back in April she was considering if she had BPD or not, so this time in July, she finally accepted it. I had done a lot of research on it since April so that I had a better idea of what it was and how I could help her with it. She then started talking to a therapist more regularly than she had in the past, and she started on new meds. She had tried being on meds many times in the past, but they always messed her up a lot, so she never stuck with it. She told me this time she really wanted to get herself sorted out, and I believed her. I think she was seeing just how drained I was. Once she started taking her meds, she started losing a lot of weight and always felt sick. I noticed she was starting to not hit the highs and lows as much as before. Then in July my family got sick with COVID, which somehow I avoided. But this meant that again, I couldn't go and see her until my family and I all tested negative. When we were finally able to see each other again, she felt a little off. She had a quicker temper with me and felt kind of standoffish at times. We still had great moments, but something felt off and I figured it was just the meds. A few days later she told me about all of these things that she found frustrating about me. It was things like not spending enough time organizing my space or not spending enough time working on my taxes for my side business. I vocalized to her that I had been working on these things, but haven't been able to get them to where I wanted to, with everything that had been going on this past year. But I promised her I would do better and put more effort into it. A few days later she said she wanted to talk about spending 2 weeks away from one another so we could both work on ourselves. I told her that I didn't feel great with that idea, and I had a bad feeling about it. But she reassured me that she wasn't trying to jeopardize our relationship and that she still loved me. She then went into issues she had with me again, like an unresolved issue with my parents, and I said I would use these 2 weeks to work on all of it and she would use this time to work on her hyper-attachment to me. We discussed her using other people in her life more when in crisis. She said we could still see each other every now and then to go grab coffee together or something and catch up, but she felt limited contact for now was the only way she could work on her dependency to me. After a couple of days, I told her that I had spoken to my parents about her unresolved issue, and they wanted to apologize. She told me she wanted to wait a week for her mom to come back from the city, so we did. The weekend before we were supposed to meet, I asked her if she wanted to go grab coffee and catch up, and she told me that she wasn't in a place for that yet but was still good to meet with my parents and resolve stuff a few days later. At this time, I noticed she has posted a nice selfie of herself on social media, as she rarely does, and it was getting way more likes than usual. I never really cared for these sorts of things, but this time I was just curious to see who had liked her photo, and one person who was from the city stood out. This guy looked like her type, and later I leaned at every post of hers after that he liked, and they started following each other. I didn't try and reach into it too much at the time though. The day she came to resolve things with my parents, she had brought some of my stuff as she said she was cleaning up, which kind of felt weird, but I knew she was there to move forward with my parents. So I tried to stay positive. She then told me she got an IUD that week and how painful it was. I asked if there was anything I could do help, but there wasn't. I was happy for her because I knew how much she really wanted one. I had never pushed her to have one, but she was always interested in getting one since she wasn't able to take birth control due to that messing her up. I asked her why now, and she said she had gotten coverage from work, but she's had that coverage for quite some time. She then told me she asked a lot of people who had gotten it and they encouraged her to get it as it would help with period cramps. I didn't try to ask into it too much more since I only thought this was a good thing. Then she told my parents about the IUD, and we resolved the issues she had, and they were happy to welcome her back with open arms and wanted to do more family things with her. Later that night she took me up to my room and I was showing her how much more organized I was and how much I had been working on myself. I had even started seeing a therapist and it was going well. She was proud of me for all the work I was putting in and was noticing it all with a smile on her face. But right after I told her that she broke up with me, saying that she really can't be in a relationship right now as she needs to focus on herself, that she's been trying to get better, but she was finding it difficult while being in a relationship as her separation anxiety was too much, that she had built up a resentment in me for all of these small things she wanted me to get done, that I needed to work on myself. I told her I thought we could work on things together, but she didn't agree. She said that months down the road when we both felt like we were in a better space that then we could talk. I felt so blindsided by this whole thing that I barely knew what to say back to her. I missed work the next day as it was all I could think about. A 6-year relationship and everything I had put into it, gone just like that. I was devastated. I called her the next day after she was done work saying that I needed to talk, so we met up and I wanted to talk about it more as I wasn't fully understanding it. We had been through so much, how we could not try to at least have a better balance of time with each other and see how that goes. I came up with so many different solutions and she was just so grumpy and mean and bitter towards me. She became really angry with me, and it was clear that I was getting nowhere while she was like this, so I left. A few days later she called me like 8 times asking for help with her dog. She was in tears and panicked, and I still loved her and loved her dogs so much. I helped raise them as pups, slept with them, fed them, helped take them to appointments when I could and go for walks and big plays in the yard. They really loved me back as I think they knew just how much I did for them. So, when she called me, even though it felt a little weird to go help, I couldn't say no. My family stopped me from trying to go, but I went anyways. I was about halfway there before she called me saying her dad was going to help her bring her dog to the ER. My therapist recommended that I try and set better boundaries with her as my girlfriend was wanting to use other people in her life for stuff like this. And I set up a time to talk with her about this, and she said that she called me because I was the only option and someone who could lift the dog for her. She was very blunt and cold with her response. A few days after this convo, she took me off all of her social medias and any joint streaming platforms we had. About 2 months have passed now and I've been working on myself a lot. Feeling pretty good about my progress, I started thinking when and how I was going to reconnect with her. Then about 2 weeks ago she contacted me about related to a purchase we had made together. During resolving this, I then found out she had gotten COVID a few days prior to this. She said no one else got it in her family, but I really thought with how careful she was that it would be very hard for her to get it. I get that it happens though, but still. I noticed after that convo she had started looking at my social media story, and I had been targeting that week to reconnect with her, just by going for a walk or even seeing the dogs because I really missed all of them. So last week before I sent the message to her, I checked her social media to see what was new with her, and I saw that she had eaten out inside of a restaurant, and it was in the city. This was something she would never have done during COVID with me or anyone because it was too risky for her, plus she hated the city. I had this really bad feeling, to be honest, so I went to check that new guy that was following her, and there they are on a date at this restaurant, going to an animal farm and later carving pumpkins together back at her place until at least 1 a.m. I was so confused by this and heartbroken at the same time. Was she lying to me this whole time about our breakup and just started dating this other guy? How long had they been together and when did it start? Before the end of our relationship. I noticed her uncle and cousin were following this guy now, as well as her friend from work. And that date really didn't seem like the kind of date where it was a first date. I felt like she had either cheated on me or at the very least lied to me about a big reason why we broke up. I still wanted to reconnect with her, so the next day I messaged her to do that. She said she didn't think it would be productive for her and said she has nothing to share. I then said there are some things that I've seen that have made me uncomfortable and I just wanted to try and understand. She started getting snappy with me, saying that what I said was feeling like an attack and that she shouldn't be of any concern to me right now. I apologized if it came across the wrong way, but I felt like it would be best spoken about in person as there's a lot of stuff I need to say to her. I've been working with my therapist and that they think I need to say this to get some things sorted out. that she could choose the time and place and if she wanted to bring someone there to make her comfortable. She then started getting furious with me, saying I was bullying her into it, and she has nothing more to discuss as she said everything she needed to and nothing will change. That I'm not owed her time and that hashing it out again is just going to make her angry and have her snap at me, and it won't be the productive convo I want to have. That she's made it clear long before we ended things why she was unhappy. And then she threw in that working with her therapist she learned just how much our relationship affected her anxiety. That was the last time we spoke. I really don't know how to handle this or what to do. A big part of me just wants to call her out on what I've seen. I was in a relationship with her for 6 years and I don't feel like I've been able to talk about everything I've wanted to, even if it doesn't change the outcome. I feel like there's so much I need to say upon reflection, and now that I've had time to process it, part of me wants to try an approach where I don't bring up this new guy and just talk to her about other stuff with our relationship that I hadn't said before. I'm afraid that if I bring up this guy that things will get ugly. Part of me still has little hope that 6 months or a year down the road things may somehow have a chance to work out. I just feel so hurt by this new guy being in her life so soon, as she said she couldn't be in a relationship so she could work on herself. She seemed so committed to do that she was willing to drop the most kind, stable and loving part of her entire life. The person that was always there for her. I've reached out to my therapist on this, and they said you could try and talk to her about other things not involving this guy, or just flat out call her out on it. But that I should only do either once I spent a lot of time thinking about it and once I was completely certain, but that she or I are both likely to get hurt in the process. My sister doesn't want me to message this girl again as she thinks she will get nasty and say things to me that'll hurt me way more than I already. One of my friends tells me it's just not worth it anymore. I don't know what to do. I know a lot of these actions of her can be explained through her BPD. The fact that she let it go undealt with for so long is a huge part in this. I tried to encourage her to get more help, but it didn't always happen. I felt like I could only push so much. Meanwhile, she was always looking for something for me to improve upon, and I always did. But finally, when I couldn't make enough time or have the mental or emotional energy to do what she wanted to, then she was done with me. I know I've been saying a lot of negative things about this girl in this post, but she is truly one of the kindest and most thoughtful people I've ever met in my life. The kindness and caring nature she has to things she loves is amazing, and I felt that for 6 years. She helped me with so much of my life, and we were so heavily involved in every aspect of each other's lives. We had so many similar interests that we could spend so much time together doing them every day. She told me I was the only person that she never got tired on hanging out with ever, and I truly wouldn't be the person I am today without her. Which is why I'm having such a difficult time accepting this. I'm always someone who wants to try and make things work until we've exhausted all our options. And she won't even entertain it or even have a convoy just to catch up. I feel so hurt by her right now and what she did. I've always put her first in almost every part of our relationship. Part of me wants to call her out because I feel like finally I'd be doing something for me and not for her. But as my sister said, I'm afraid of things getting turned ugly. I'm also afraid of never seeing her dogs again or hearing her voice again. Even if we're not together, I'd still like to talk to her and maybe see the dogs every once in a while. I don't know if there's any option here besides just saying nothing and walking away that would do that. Does anyone have any advice how they would move forward with this? Is it as simple as not answering her or calling her out on what she's done? If anyone has any experience being in a relationship with someone with BPD, that would be of great help here.